So I want to thank you. Today we're going to be talking about best practices to having a great dental website. My name is Cheryl Pederzoli. I'm on the marketing team here at ProSites, and I'm happy to be talking to you today. We're going to go over 5 different things. What are some of the best practices you can use? What are some common mistakes people make? Talk a little bit about a custom website design and when it's the right choice to go for a custom website. Questions you should always ask before hiring a website provider. And then we'll conclude our presentation and have time for some Q&A. So to get started, let's talk about some of the best practices. So the first best practice we like to talk about is making sure you're very visual in your website. You have less than 50 milliseconds to capture a visitor's attention. So you've got to make sure that as soon as they're looking at your website, it pops out at them, it's appealing, it brings them right in. You want to include proper use of videos, images, iconography. Those are all elements that draw the eye, that engage people and get them to continue to look. We found that pages with more photos or infographics receive 74% more views than text-only pages. Now, it doesn't mean avoid having pages that are heavy in text. It just means that when you have those pages, make sure you're interspersing them with all of these graphical elements that are going to help people process, understand, and kind of pull them through that page. You want to select images that resonate with your patients. You know, one of the things that we always try to warn people against is if you're in the city, don't show pictures of mountains or countryside, because what people are going to look at and say, hey, this dentist isn't local to me. This isn't somebody who understands where I live and understands who I am. You want to make sure that it looks like you are working with the type of clients you want to pull in. You want those images to be things that they can look and say, yeah, I could see myself going to him. He has images that resonate. And it's not even a conscious thing. It's one of those subconscious things that they're looking at, that the images resonate and they could see themselves working with you. We do recommend you use stock photography. Stock photography has come such a long way. There are so many more images than there have ever been in the past. And stock photography presents a very professional look. And if you're one of those people who just doesn't like it, you can find with the niche sites. There's a lot of them out there that'll actually give you images that are just different than your standard stock photography. So when you do use those, make sure you use them in other places too. So if you do social media posts, use some of the images on your website through to those social media, because it's going to help you get more out of it, but it's also going to give you a nice consistent image that when people are looking, they understand who you are and what you do, and it's very, very consistent. The next best practice we like to talk about is presenting a clear identity. And what this really means is that when somebody comes to your website for the first time, they may have absolutely no idea who you are. They might have just found you from a Google search, a dentist in my area. So when they get to your website, they need to really understand who you are and who your practice is right up front. So the way that you do that is make sure that you use a marketing message. Think about what your marketing message is, who you are as a practice, what that message you want to convey, and then use things that help to reinforce it. So if you work mostly with children, you want to make sure you have lots of pictures of children throughout your website. You want to use taglines that are going to help to reinforce what it is that you're trying to show and showcase to people. Don't try to get too fancy or too creative. Try to make sure that you're true to yourself. One of the things too is a lot of people say, I don't know what resonates with my patients. I don't know why they look to me or what makes me stand out against the next dentist who's up the block. So one of the recommendations that we would provide you with is go check out your online reviews. Look at Yelp, look at Google reviews, wherever you have some reviews, and read the comments. Typically what you'll discover is those things that make you special, that make you stand out, people are talking about it. Read through those comments and see where are those common themes. Those are the things that resonate with people, that they remember, and those are going to be great things to highlight on your website so that they understand who you are and what you do. So the next best practice is making sure you organize your information clearly. 75% of people say the most important element in website design is the ease of finding information. And this is from a study of a marketing firm called HubSpot that is the leader in inbound marketing. So you want to make sure that when somebody reaches your website, they find what they're looking for very, very quickly. Because if they don't, they're going to leave. They're not even going to sit there and look. So you want to look to make sure that you've got really clear navigation. It makes it very clear, how do I find you? What are my contacts? Showcase what those services are that you offer. You can use categories and subcategories. I don't know if you can tell, but in this image here, where it talks about our practice, our service, there's little plus signs. And that means that those are going to drop down, and those are going to be items that if you click on it, you're going to see services, and then you're going to see a list of all of those different services. So it's going to make it really easy for somebody to understand what it is that you're looking for and what you provide, and how to get through it. So just make sure your navigation is not overly complex either, though. You don't want to have 2 or 3 lines of navigation. It's just not going to come across well. It's going to make it very hard for people to understand what it is that you do, understand how to get what they're looking for. So our 4th best practice is making sure that you create a site that converts. What that really means is think up front about what your goal is for your website. And everybody's goal might be different. One goal might be, I want people to call me. I want them to pick up the phone because I've got somebody who's great on the phone who's going to always have that patient make an appointment. Another goal might be that you want to have people filling out a form and make sure that they always have access to that form so they can send that out and you can turn that visitor into a patient. Another goal could potentially be, you get most of your patients in from word of mouth, or you've got a very established patient base. You don't need to kind of sell yourself on your website. You just really need to reinforce who you are, that you're a legitimate business. So your website might actually be a little bit more simplified. And it's really just talking about, hey, this is who I am. Here's some testimonials that kind of prove who I am. This is my location information, things like that. So everybody's goal is very, very different, potentially. You guys all probably have very similar goals in trying to use your website to find new patients, but how you go about it might be different. So anyways, so long story, think about what those goals are and understand that, because when you're trying to build your website, those goals are going to dictate how you build your site. So for an example, if you want people to call you, instead of having a big, huge contact us button that drives to a form, you might just be putting that phone number right up front. Call me at, here's my phone number. You might also find that if your goal is trying to make sure you're just kind of reinforcing who you are, you might want to make sure that your testimonials are upfront and very, very obvious, and sprinkle a few of them on your home page in addition to having a testimonial page. So you want to think about what it is that you're trying to accomplish and then build it to actually get those conversions. So if you want people to fill out the form, make sure you put that contact us form on every page. It can be right at the bottom of the page. You want to make sure there's a button in your navigation that's very clear that people can click that and get to the contact us form too. Another thing that you can do is a smile analysis questionnaire. You have a form on that. And that's something else that you can drive people to is, hey, let's analyze your smile. So there's lots of different goals you could potentially have. And it's really important to understand those so that you make sure that when you're building, you're actually building your website to accomplish those goals. So the next best practice is make sure that your website is patient-focused. One of the common mistakes that people make when they build a new website is they put the information up there that they want to share, not necessarily the information that a patient is looking for. So think about what information is going to help earn a patient's confidence, improve your website rankings, and actually make it so that your patients who come, or your potential patients who come, find the information they're looking for. So, quality content. There's a couple of benefits to quality content. When we talk about that, what we're talking about is the copy on a page. What kind of things do you talk about? Your services you offer. Maybe there's some articles or how-to documents that you put on there. Having good quality content is important because not only does your patient want to read that and understand it, but it also helps with your website rankings. And understanding that a little bit more, If you have information about your services, you want to make sure all the major services that you're promoting, you have a single page for. Because then when somebody searches and says, I'm looking for teeth whitening in my neighborhood, Google is going to say, hey, Dr. Smith has teeth whitening and they're in the right neighborhood. Let me show them the teeth whitening page. So what's going to end up happening is that because the search engine's gone, it's identified all the pages on your website, what the content is, it knows the intent of somebody's search query, so it's going to deliver the information that best answers that, which is that page about teeth whitening. Some other things that you want to make sure you do when you're developing your content: make it easy to skim and scan, use headlines, subheadings, bullet points. Nobody likes a page that's all text, so make sure that you kind of separate the page, put a little bit more white space in it by putting some breakpoints with the different sections and bullets. You always want to make sure that you're professional. You want to have it being kind of conversational, and when we say that, we really say you want to have like your personality come through. You want people to say, this is somebody I can relate to. So the way that you write it, the copy that comes through, you want it to seem relatable. You want it to seem easy for people to read and understand. A lot of times people look for website companies who will actually offer some pre-written content. And that it saves a lot of time. And that content could be things about, services. What is this service? What can you expect? When you do work with somebody who offers pre-written content, we do recommend that when you do use some of their pre-written, you still try to customize it a little bit, personalize it for your practice. Maybe there's something that you do a little bit differently. Maybe you want to actually intersperse the name of the dentist throughout. So just think about how you can also customize that pre-written content. So it's not really, it's really just saving you time by giving you a huge head start on developing the content for the website. That's really what the focus is. You also want to make sure that your content is optimized for search engines. And optimizing for search engines, like I said before, if somebody's going to search for teeth whitening, make sure you have a page for teeth whitening. So think about that as you're trying to develop what those pages are. The next best practice we talk about is using testimonials to your advantage. So between all of the online review sites out there, having testimonials on your own page, you guys already know how important these are. A lot of cases, testimonials, online reviews, they are replacing the word of mouth that you guys have come to expect and rely on as part of the marketing of your business. And the great thing about testimonials and online reviews is if somebody doesn't have a friend who's going to tell them who to go see, or doesn't have anybody in the area who's ever worked with you before, looking at these online reviews and these testimonials is going to help just instantly give them that reassurance that you as a provider are somebody they can trust. So we do recommend you have a testimonial page. We also recommend that you intersperse those testimonials throughout the pages and just make them very relevant. So if you've got a testimonial, maybe somebody had gone and gotten some teeth whitening before their wedding and it was a great experience and everything looked beautiful and that's what the testimonial describes, put it on your teeth whitening page. So it helps reinforce that service that you're selling right there. Another thing that's very effective is before and after photos on your website. So if you're doing work on people and you take before and after photos, we definitely recommend you throw those up in your office. Everybody loves to see that and kind of loves that enforcement about what they can expect if they're working with you. But putting it on the website is also a really great way to showcase that. The other thing that some providers do offer is a reputation marketing feature, which helps make it easier to collect those reviews on your website instead of somebody, collecting it in the office, manually having to type it into the website copy. A reputation marketing feature might make it a lot easier for that to show up. And even some of the reputation marketing will say, hey, this is a great review. Can we leave it on Google or can you put it on Yelp for me? So it helps to really build the overall online reputation of you via the website. The next best practice we like to talk about is optimizing for speed. So I'm sure you guys aren't surprised. 40% of visitors will abandon a web page if it takes more than 3 seconds to load. I know I do this all the time, especially if it's not a page that I'm got my heart set on. So if you're searching for something, Google presents you with 10 results. You open up the first one, it's taking forever. You just hit the back button and go to the next person in line. Well, patients do the same thing too. You know, if you're in an area that's very highly populated, your website doesn't show up quickly. It's very easy for somebody who's not looking specifically for you, just looking for a dentist, to hit the back button, look to the next one in line. So you want to make sure that your site loads quickly. The things that you really want to watch for, things that are going to slow you down, is if you have flash players, if you've got music that automatically plays, if you've got slideshows that automatically go through, or unnecessary animation or overused animation. If you're not sure if your site's loading quickly, slowly, Google does have a speed test tool that you can use. If you just search, Google speed test tool, it'll pull you up. It'll show you what your speed comes in at. Sometimes it does seem to warn you a little bit more than I think it necessarily needs to, but it's a great way for you to go in there, find out what might be slowing down your website, because it'll actually tell you which elements are slowing you down. So just a little tip for you. The next best practice is going mobile. Now, it seems obvious, but there's still a lot of people who do not have a mobile-friendly website. And as you see, nearly 80% of users will exit a website that is not mobile-friendly. So what a mobile-friendly site is, it's going to be a responsive website. It's going to be one where if you open it up on a desktop, it looks like a normal desktop website. If you open it up on a phone, it's going to look like a smaller site, one that's actually sized to fit on a phone. Now, there's a big reason why this is important, and it's Google. Google loves mobile-friendly, responsive websites. We've known for a while that more Google searches take place on mobile devices than desktop computers. But one of the things that's happened over the last couple of years is that Google is actually prioritizing mobile websites in their search results. So if you've got two dentists in the same town, one has a mobile-friendly website, the other does not, when somebody searches dentist in that town, the one with the mobile-friendly website is going to show up first in line. So Google does prioritize them, and it also is using the mobile website as the website, I'm going to say the right word for this, the website that they use when they decide what the content is on a page. Their indexes are based on mobile websites. In the past, a lot of people had one mobile website and one desktop website, and depending on what device size you came, kind of the website completely changed, but it was literally two different built websites, as opposed to now this responsive design means it's going to automatically resize. If you had one of those older ones where it was a mobile website and then you also had a desktop website, the content on the mobile website is the one that Google is actually going to be indexing for, not the one that's on the desktop. So we really encourage everybody to make sure you get a responsive website. That's going to give you the best experience. It's going to have the best results also when we're working with Google. So the next best practice we talk about is helping patients find you online. So it's nothing worse than having somebody actually look for your practice online and not being able to find you. And the reasons that might happen is that if you haven't claimed your business listing, that's a really easy way that Google understands local businesses, where they're located, all the information about them. The other thing is if you're not getting indexed for the right keywords, then if somebody searches for you, it doesn't always, or searches for a dentist who provides the teeth whitening services, I'll keep going back to the same example. If you're not including teeth whitening on your website, you're not going to show up. One of the tools that you can use is Google's free keyword planner. And what it does is allows you to type in, you can actually use your website, or you can just type in a word, and it'll give you all kinds of alternative keywords that you want to focus in on. It'll also tell you how often they're searched. A good reason to use something like this is there's always industry jargon, and then there's the way that patients say it. And when Google is going to present search results, it's going to be based on how a patient actually searches. So think about the words that the patient's going to search, not the industry jargon that we use when we're talking about it, when we talk to another dentist about what we're offering our services. So think about that. we always encourage you to make sure you have very consistent name, address, and phone on your website. You want to have that throughout your website. You want to make sure it's text on your website, so you actually physically type it in as opposed to being an image file. And then all of the other places where you're listed, if you're on Yelp, you've got your Google listing, you've got your website, make sure you're consistent in the way that you do it. So if you use road spelled out, make sure you always use road spelled out. Don't have it be road spelled out in some places, RD in others. Be consistent throughout. So the next best practice is providing secure access. So what we're really referring to here is having an HTTPS website. If you're not sure if you do or not, if you open up your website in a browser and you look at the URL that shows up in the top corner, it's going to say HTTP or it's going to say HTTPS. When it has the S in it, you know that you've got a SSL certificate behind it, which is going to provide the extra level of security. If you don't have it, this is where things start to, I don't want to say penalize you, but Chrome is actually showing warnings when people don't have secure websites. So if you look at a secure website, you might see a green lock to the left of your URL. If you don't have a secure certificate, that green lock might actually be yellow or red. There might be some warnings coming out to people. And Google actually said that their Chrome browser is going to be showing warnings that are going to get more obvious for people. So within the next few months, we expect that to be much more obvious if you're on a non-secure website. So you want to make sure you do that. Usually all you need to do is call your website provider. Tell them you need to make sure your website's got an SSL certificate, or tell them you want it to have, an HTTPS URL. Usually it's pretty easy to add it. It might take a couple of days for the processing of it. And it's relatively inexpensive. And it's going to make a huge difference in the results that you're getting. And the fact that if a patient goes to a website and it's not showing secure, they're going to be concerned, especially since it's a provider of health information. They want to make sure everything is secure. So next best practice, being in compliance. So I don't know about you guys, but I've heard stories about dentists who are being sued because their website's not accessible. It doesn't follow forth with the guidelines set in the Americans with Disabilities Act. So what you want to do is make sure that you accommodate for those things. Now, there is the rule itself does not explicitly include websites, but there is a lot of cases where people are saying that the language and the spirit of the law includes websites as a place of public accommodation. So talk to your website provider if you're not sure if your website is accessible. I can tell you with ProSites, it's a quick little option. When you're in the dashboard, you flip a switch, and what ends up happening is there's a button that shows up after you do that on your website that I think it just says accessibility. You click on that button and it just changes the copy on the page so it can be read through with an accessibility reader, a website reader. It's a pretty simple thing. For ProSites, if you've got other providers, ask your provider what they offer. So the next is measure your ROI. It's important to know what marketing channels are actually working for you, especially if you're making an investment in your marketing and you're paying to have ads, either Google ads, search ads, or if you're working with any other company to get ads to your website also. So you want to make sure that you've got, there's so many different ways. What we're showing here is the actual dashboard. There's also options to have Google Analytics, or other people may actually, the provider might send you reports on a monthly basis that shows you what your results are. So when you're looking at the results, you want to make sure that the dashboard is going to say, how many people came in from this channel? If you paid $500 in Google search ads, you want to know that of those people who came over from the search ads, how many of those completed a form? How many of those became patients of mine? Because that's going to be the important information to know what marketing investments are worth it for you. Otherwise, you're just going to keep throwing money but not knowing if it's actually working. So it's important to make sure you're able to measure your return on your investment. So let's talk about some of the common website design mistakes. Do not have a bad logo. I think that goes without saying in all of your marketing. But we discourage you from using too much text, colors, too many fonts. You want to make sure the colors make sense and they resonate. And you want to make sure that when you have the colors selected for your logo, they're colors that are going to present well in multiple formats too. If you put a pale yellow on a website, because everybody's monitor displays colors slightly differently, it might actually just kind of fade into the background. It might not even be seen for some people. So just think about that when you're picking out logos. Don't have too many navigation options. We kind of talked about that a little bit earlier. Make sure you don't have too many rows, not too much text. Make sure it's very easy to see. Do not use too many colors. So not just logos, but across your whole website. We recommend no more than 3 colors on a page. One's your primary, the other is your secondary color. So maybe your primary is black. Some people use gray type. Your secondary might be a blue or something like that. And your third might be green accents or red accents even. Just a third color just to kind of perk things up a little bit. If you have too many colors on a page, it looks too busy. Visually, people's eyes just don't like it. It kind of makes you look less professional even. So we recommend you do not have too many colors. We also recommend you do not choose difficult to read fonts. So things to watch for: too big, too small, curly, fancy. Sometimes serif fonts are difficult to read on computer screens. Keep in mind that whatever you're using needs to be viewable on both a mobile device and a normal screen. So when that happens, sometimes if you use a font that's a little too fancy, it's hard to read on a mobile screen. So last couple of do nots. Don't forget to maintain your website. So check it frequently. Make sure you don't have broken links. Make sure your forms are still working. You also, over time, the content might not be relevant. There might be a new procedure, a new way of doing something, and you want to make sure that you're updating that information frequently. So keep an eye on your website. Don't just set it and forget it. Do not be inconsistent. So you want to make sure that every page on your website has that consistent coloring, images, white space, messaging, voice. You want to make sure that throughout you are presented as the professional you are. And when things are inconsistent, it looks like things were just kind of haphazardly thrown together. You want to avoid that. You also want to avoid too much text. So it's easy to fill up a page with content, or it's hard depending on who you are. Sometimes it's very difficult to do. So when you do that, you want to make sure that the text, if you have a page that's very, very long for text, is it something that you can break up into multiple pages? For example, are you actually just talking about 2 different services and you can have a separate page for each service? If the page should have that amount of text because that's just what's appropriate, you want to try to break it up. Put in some headers, put in some bolding, things that'll help visually somebody to kind of scan a page and see what's there and try to figure out where they really want to read. So let's talk really quickly about a custom website design. If you don't know what a custom website design is, and I can talk from the ProSites experience, we offer a lot of designs, I think over 100, 150 designs that are already kind of pre-built. And you can go in and you can select one of those designs and you can have your website up in days. Very easy to turn on, get going. A custom design is one where you actually work with one of our designers to put together a site that is very unique to you. In the cases where you may want to look for a custom design might be you have a very strong marketing professional appearance already that you want to carry through. Maybe you use very unique colors or fonts or images, and you use it on all your brochures, you have signage, and you want to make sure that that carries through to your website so you're nice and consistent. That would be an example when you would want to use a custom design. Another one might be you've just got a really, if you're in a newer office, maybe you've got this look of a granite wall that you want to carry that through, and it's not one of those standards. You need to have something a little bit different so you have that same imagery coming through on your website. That's another just example of where you might want to do it. The custom design process is pretty simple, kind of six steps. It takes a little bit of time to go through it because there's a lot of revisions. We want to make sure it's perfect and it's exactly what you're looking for. So we go through a phrase, and here's a little more description for you. We want to understand what you're looking for. So we might ask you to provide us with some samples of websites you like or elements you like on different sites. What colors? If you have an existing site, what do you want to keep when we build you a new one? The designers start to work on it. They'll actually send you over these mock-ups, these images of what your website will look like. And that gives you a chance to look and say, yes, no, this is not at all the color I thought it was going to be. Let's try something different. Kind of go back and forth to try to get it to where you want it to be. Then from there, we go through a quality phase where we build it up on a server, an internal server, so that we can take a look at it. We can push all the little links, make sure everything's working the way it should be, give you a chance to take a look at it, make sure everything is perfect before we actually launch it. And once we launch it, we typically will recommend that you send out emails to your patients, let them know that you've launched a new website. You'd love to have them go take a look. Make a big fuss about having a new website. It's a big deal. So it's an exciting thing for people. So that's a little bit about our custom websites, if that's something you want to go for. The next, I just want to tell you a little bit about if you're going to choose a new website company, what are some questions you should ask? And this is whether you're talking to us or anybody else out there. So your first question is, how does your team choose the right design for my practice? You should always understand, are you going to be handed just one design? Are you going to have a couple designs to choose from? Is it going to be something where you're working with a designer and you're going to combine, come up with what that plan is? So always ask that question. Ask what elements, if any, can be customized. Every designer is going to be a little different. Every company you work with is going to be a little different. So if you're working with something that's kind of a little pre-built, then you might have some more limitations in what you can actually customize for you. If you're going for a full custom design, it's pretty much anything. But ask that with any provider you're going to be looking at. Find out if your site is optimized for search. So while there is additional SEO or search engine optimization services that people invest in, at the very basic, your website should incorporate some of those elements. Your URL should say what the service is within the URL. The URL should make sense. A long time ago when people were building websites, it was like, here's my URL /page 1, URL /page 2. You should never be seeing anything like that. It should always be logical and make sense. So ask if your site will be optimized. Find out how content's updated. Is there content you can use? Do you have to write content yourself every time? If you want to make a change to a page, is it something you can do? Do you need to ask them to do it? Is there limitations to how much you can do and how often? To find out about content updating. You always want to ask if the site's going to be mobile friendly. I talked about that already and why. You want to understand what their customer support is. Is there a live person, or is it only going to be via email? What are the hours they're going to be there for? Can you use unlimited support, or is there limits? Do you have to pay every time you talk to somebody? Find out. Always ask for samples, testimonials, best practices, references. It's really good to know that they've worked with other people before, that they've done similar projects to yours before. Ask for a reference. Getting on the phone with somebody is always very helpful because you can understand a little bit more about what they experienced when they were talking with that website provider and understand what you can expect when you go through it too. You always want to make sure that your site will stay up to date. Technology changes. So understand what that website provider will do for you. So an example I can give you is 5 years ago, having a mobile-friendly, responsive site was not nearly as important as it is today. And now we're seeing the secure websites, the HTTPS websites become a bigger deal. And so you want to make sure that you have a provider who's going to be able to keep up to date with those changes. And as new technology evolves and things come out, you want to make sure that they're going to be there. So ask them what they offer, what's involved, how do you stay up to date. You also want to ask what's included in my fees. If you're paying monthly fees, sometimes you pay for an annual fee. Understand what's in there, if there's any extra fees, if there's anything else you're going to have to be doing. You also want to ask what other marketing services they offer. So in some cases, the website provider only provides websites. In other cases, they do other things for you, like helping you to manage Google Ads or full search engine optimization, or even social media management. So understanding what they offer up front might actually help you select one over the other, because some cases you can get a package of services, which is going to be easier, because if one day you are going to want those additional services, it's going to be more costly if you have to work with 2 different vendors. So understand that. We talked a little bit about ROI, so you want to make sure you can track the results from the website. So ask them, how are you going to do that? You want to make sure that you're able to get that secure website with that HTTPS and avoid the not secure warnings. Make sure you ask that question also. So, in conclusion, when it comes down to your marketing, while 96% of dentists currently use word of mouth as part of their marketing strategy, and people say the dental patients say word of mouth is how they find their dentist, most of the time people will still not call you without looking at your website. They're going to want that reinforcement of who you are, what you can offer, and they use that to get comfortable, even if somebody said, hey, go see Dr. Smith, he's great. So you want to make sure that your website is the cornerstone of your marketing. You want to make sure your website is professional, got lots of different things on it to engage people. You want to have a marketing approach where you're thinking about the search engine optimization. And if you're going to be doing paid ads, make sure that carries through so that everything is consistent. Having that good website is going to build your online visibility, it's going to build trust, and it's going to get you chosen by potential patients. So, I know my time is a little bit tight here. I think I went a few minutes longer than I thought I was going to. I do have some time if anybody wants to send in any questions. If you do have those questions, you can use the question window within the GoToWebinar. You'll also get an email following, probably within the next day or so, that's going to have a link to the presentation, a link to the recording that we did, and you're also welcome to just reply to that message and ask any questions at that point in time. So if you think of something a little bit later on, no worries, you can always give us a call or you can send in the questions then. So we are ProSites. We've got over 7,000 dentists working with us right now for their online marketing needs. We've been endorsed by many state associations. We've got discounts with a lot of those associations also, so always ask about that. And we were County Choice Award winners for many years. So I'm looking and I don't see any questions coming in at this point, so I'll close things down. I want to thank you all for joining us, and I hope you guys have a great day.